Today we are going to talk about a mobile transport layer, as I've already mentioned. Okay, so basically this is what we are going to cover in our syllabus. Okay, first we'll look at the overview of the transport layer. So basically we are going to look at the TCP/IP protocol stack. Okay, we're going to look at all the brief overview. Then in the second section, we are going to look at the architecture, meaning all the layers of the TCP/IP. Okay. Now, these both, the first and the second topic, you have already done in your previous subjects in CN, your computer networks, or you must have done it in data communication. Okay. So it will be just a revision. Okay. So we'll be just going through all of this as it is there in your syllabus. Then in the third topic, adaptation of TCP window, we are going to go through one or two features of TCP. Okay. So basically, we are not going to talk about the entire TCP IP, all the protocols that are there, but we are just going to talk about TCP in the third topic. Okay. I'm going to see how the TCP works for wired networks, what are the problems, and whether it can be used in the same manner for wireless networks. Okay. Then based on the problems that we discuss in the third topic, in the fourth topic we will be discussing the improvements, how the TCP performance can be improved in fixed networks as well as wireless networks. Okay, basically this is what we are going to try to achieve starting from today. Okay, so let's start today with the brief overview of your TCP IP. Okay, so your TCP IP protocol was developed by DARPA, which stands for Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Okay, you must be knowing this. It was developed in 1960. So the basic purpose was to create a communication service between various devices, or to provide a interconnection between various devices using various protocols. Okay. Now there are various protocols in this TCP IP protocol suite, but it has been named after the two most famous protocols, TCP and IP. TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol and IP stands for Internet Protocol. So based on these two protocols, it has been named, but actually it contains a lot of protocols. Okay, so this TCP IP has four main layers. The topmost layer is the application layer, then it is followed by the transport layer, then internet layer, and then the network interface layer, which is the lowest layer. Okay, so basically a network interface layer consists of two layers from your OSI model, that is your physical layer and data link layer. Okay, so in TCP IP we call it as the network interface layer. So like I was telling you, your TCP IP has a lot of protocols, not just TCP and IP. So you can look at this diagram here and you can see in each layer how many protocols are there. Okay, so we start from the topmost layer, that is the application layer. So application layer is having protocols like Telnet, FTP, SMTP, HTTP, DNS, SNMP. Okay, then your transport layer is having mainly two protocols, TCP and UDP. Okay, now you can see here this Telnet, FTP, SMTP all are linked to TCP. Okay, why? Because you know there's a very important difference between TCP and UDP. Okay, TCP is connection oriented and UDP is connectionless. So based on this, those protocols are just shown for you to help you to recognize which are connection oriented and which are connectionless. Okay, then in the internet layer, the main protocol in the internet layer is the IP protocol, which we have already discussed before. Besides IP protocol, there are other protocols like IGMP, ICMP, ARP, RARP. Okay, and then in your network interface layer, There are more protocols, but they have not specified exactly. Okay, you can use any protocols that work. Okay, so they have not shown any specific protocols for this layer. Okay, they have not defined any specific protocol, but you can use any of the standard protocols at this layer. Okay, so this is briefly your TCP/IP protocol stack. Okay, consists of 4 layers. Topmost layer is the application layer, then transport layer, then internet layer, and then you have the network interface layer. Okay, so here by mistake in this diagram it is come as internet interface layer, but it is network interface layer. Okay, so this is basically your protocol stack. Okay, so today we are just looking at currently we are just looking at a brief overview. Okay, so can anyone tell me before I go in the next slide, before I go to the next slide, what is the difference? Okay, now I'm talking with respect to your, you can say with respect to your OSI model. What is the difference between transport layer and network layer? What is the main function of these layers? Okay, can someone tell me what the IP layer does in the network? Let me frame the question again. What does the IP layer does? What does the IP protocol do? What's the functionality of the IP protocol? If there is 2 computers, what does the IP protocol do for you? Anyone? Okay. Yes, both these answers are correct. Okay, both these answers are correct. So basically what Yash has said is correct and what Sakshi also has said is correct. IP protocol deals with the routing of packets, and Yash says that transport layer is identifying the processes and IP is helping to identify the hosts. So let me just elaborate on this before we proceed. Okay, you need to understand this part before we proceed. So, see, imagine you're having 2 computers. Okay, you're having 2 computers. Both these computers are connected through the internet. Say these are now connected through the internet. Okay, this is the internet. Let's say this is system A, this is system B. Okay, so what is the job of your network layer? Okay, network layer. So network layer, by network layer I mean what is your network layer? I mean IP protocol. Okay, so what is the job of your IP protocol? So if system A wants to send data to system B, okay, so what your IP protocol does is, as long as it knows the IP address, this system will be having some IP address, right? So as long as it knows the IP address of the destination, the IP protocol will send the packet, the data, okay, the data packet over the internet to the destination. So what it will do, it will put the source address as the IP address of system A, okay, destination address as the IP address of system B, okay, and it will send this packet, over the internet to the system. Okay, now in this system, this packet has to be given to a specific application. Okay, You know, there are so many applications that are running on each system. Like one application of it could be, for example, email. Okay, so your email could be one application. So you know your email is basically a SMTP protocol. Okay, and at what port number it runs your email? Can anyone tell me what is the port number for email? Does anyone know what is the port number for email? SMTP? It's 25. Okay, Telnet is 23. So Telnet is 23, SMTP is 25. Okay, so now suppose, let's say this data that system A is sending, this data that system A is sending is say a email. Okay, so what your IP protocol does is it takes this email, puts the source IP address, the destination IP address, and make sure that this email reaches to the system B. Okay, it makes sure that this email reaches to system B. Now in your system B, your email runs on the port number 25. Okay, runs on the port number 25. So the job of the IP or your network layer is to take the email from this system at this IP address, some IP address is there of system A, and deliver this data to the IP address at system B. Okay, then what your transport layer does is, okay, what your transport layer does is it takes this packet that has reached here at the system, okay, and it delivers this packet to the specific application or to the specific process. Okay, so where it delivers, it takes this from the IP address and delivers it at the port number. Okay, each application or each process is having some port number associated. So it's the job of the transport layer to take that packet forward. Okay, so once the packet has reached at the system, it's the job of the transport layer to take this packet and to deliver it to the application. So in this case, if that application is an email, the email will be running at port number 25. So the transport layer will make sure that this email is taken and delivered to the port number 25. Okay, because there are multiple applications that are running on the computer. Okay, there could be telnet running, then telnet is running at port number 23. Okay, there could be some DNS application, then that DNS application is running at port number 53. Okay, like that you have studied all these port numbers in your previous subject, so I will not go to all of this. So that's the basic job of your transport layer. So the job of your transport layer is to take whatever packets are arriving at the system, okay, and to deliver it at the specific port numbers, okay, depending where it was intended for which process that thing has been intended for. So that's the job of the transport layer. Okay, so what is the job of the IP layer? To deliver the packet from one system to another system based on the IP address. Okay, and then what's the job of the transport layer? To take that packet and to deliver it to the specific process, and where it delivers it at the port number. So that's what has been told to you by Yash when he said that transport layer deals with identifying the process. Okay, so transport layer helps in identifying the process, and IP helps in identifying the host. Okay, so that is the basic functioning of these two layers. Okay, and these two protocols. Is it clear? Is it clear how these two layers, how they differ in the functionality? Okay, both of them transport the packets, but how they transport the packets? Are you all clear about both these layers? Any doubts? This is just for your information so that it will help you in understanding what I'm going to explain in future. Is it clear what the transport layer does? How it delivers the packet to the port number? And in same thing will happen in the reverse order. If B had to send a packet to A, IP protocol will take that packet based on the IP address of A. It will deliver the packet here, okay, and then it's the job of the transport layer to take the packet and to deliver it to the application. There's so many processes running on system A, so depending on which application this packet is intended for, it will deliver the packet to that specific port number. Okay, that's how it functions. Is it okay, everyone? Yeah, Yash, I won't be going little deeper into this, okay? Because this subject is not to deal with CN. So I'll be just touching the topics that I need for my syllabus completion. Okay, so I won't be going into more depth of CN. I'll be just be giving you an overview of the topics we need to understand our mobile computing. So, is it clear about how these two layers are functioning, everyone? Before I proceed. Okay, I assume you have all understood. Okay, so let's look then at the next slide. Okay, and now understand how the messages are transmitted between the systems. Okay, so basically what we are going to do now is, in the next slide, I'm going to tell you, if we are having two systems. Okay, so if you are having two systems, so suppose there is system A, there is system B. Okay, so if there is TCP IP protocol stack on both the systems, so like we have discussed, your TCP IP protocol stack will have 4 layers. Okay, it will have 4 layers. So system A will have the entire TCP IP protocol stack. Similarly, system B will have the entire TCP IP protocol stack. Okay, so again there will be 4 layers. Topmost layer will be the application layer, then transport layer, then you will have internet layer, and you will have your network interface layer. Okay, so similarly in system B also you will have application layer, transport layer, internet layer, and network interface layer. Okay, so these both systems will be obviously connected to the internet. So if system A is sending data, okay, some process in system A, some application in system A is sending data to system B over the internet. Okay, how the message is or the data is transferred from system A to B, and then vice versa. Okay, we'll just look at it in the next slide. Okay, so in this we are just going to look at the overview. Okay, little bit in detail we'll look in after some time. Okay, so basically remember this diagram as I'm going over the next slide. There is two systems, system A, system B. System A is having the entire TCP IP protocol stack, having the 4 layers. System B also is having the TCP IP protocol stack, having the 4 layers, and both the systems are connected over the internet. Okay, so let's see how the data gets exchanged between these two systems. Okay, so basically when say there are this, like I told you, two systems, system A and system B. Okay, so system A wants to send some data to system B. Okay, some application in system A will be sending the data to some other application in system B. So how it will work is, the application layer protocol will make use of the lower layer protocols to send the data. Okay, so basically what it will do is, it will convert the data into a message. Okay, it will convert the data of the system A into something known as a message. Okay, this message will be then passed on to the transport layer. Okay, the transport layer then converts the message into smaller parts called as segments. Okay, so in the same data that was passed by the application, in the application layer it was known as a message. The message is broken into smaller parts by the transport layer. Now it is called as segments. And the transport layer passes the segments to the internet layer. Okay. And the internet layer, basically a IP protocol, will attach certain information to this and convert the segments into packets. Okay. So it will add some header to that segments and it will convert the segments into packets. And it will pass these packets over to the next layer. Okay. So in the fourth layer, the lowest layer, the network access or the network interface layer will convert these packets into frames. So basically it will add some details like checksum or error checking or some certain additional information and convert the packets into frames. Okay, and once it has made the frames, it will transmit these frames over the internet. Okay, so this is what happens on the side of the system A. Okay, so I'll just repeat what happens on the side of the system A. System A has some data to send, so it will pass it to the application layer. The application layer, the data is called as a message. The message is transmitted, is passed over to the transport layer, who breaks it into smaller chunks known as segments. The segments are passed over to the internet layer, where the IP protocol adds some additional header information and calls the segments as packets and passes these packets over to the network layer, the network access layer or the network interface layer. The network interface layer will add additional information such as checksum or some other error checking information and call those packets as frames and transmit the frames over the internet. Okay. Now in system B, the opposite happens. The frames are received by the lowest layer known as the network interface layer. Okay. So now the opposite happens. So there's additional information that was put by system A, error checking or checksum, all that information is removed. Okay, that information is removed and the frame is passed on to the, after removing, the frame is passed on to the internet layer as a packet. Okay, similarly at the internet layer, then it removes all the additional information that was added by the internet layer of system A. So in system B, the internet layer strips the information that was added by the internet layer of system A. So all the additional IP information that was added is removed and that packet is sent into smaller chunks known as segments. Okay. In the transport layer, the packets are known as back as segments. Then again the segments are removed. The whatever the smaller bits have been, the chunks have been broken into. Those chunks are reconstructed. Okay, as a message, and it is passed on to the application layer. And then this application layer is basically is the application, the original data which was sent by system A. So this is the basically the original data that is received by the system B. So in basically in the system B, whatever was added in the system A at that specific layer, that information is stripped off. Okay, so you basically strip off the corresponding layer information and the reverse happens. Okay, so from frames you get back the original data. So this is what how your TCP IP 4 layers function. Okay, this is just an overview. We'll look at it in a little bit of more detail in the future slides. Okay, so basically you need to remember that at the application layer, the data will be known as a message. At the transport layer, it is known as a segment. At the internet layer, it is known as a packet. And at the network interface layer, it is known as a frame. Okay, and then the reverse is happening on the other side to get back the original data. So this is how basically data is transmitted between two systems in using your TCP/IP protocol stack. So this is just basically a revision of how you have already studied this part in your CN or data communication. So any questions here? This is just an overview, not a detailed part. Any doubts, students, about this? So shall I continue? Okay, let me continue then. So basically now in the next slide, I had shown you in the previous slide, okay, all these protocols. I think you know all these protocols, okay. So in the next slide, I'll be just showing you the a brief definition, 1 or 2 line of each of these protocols, okay. I'll be not reading it aloud. You just read it silently, and it's just for your information basically, okay. So all these protocols that are mentioned here in this slide, we'll be going through them one by one. Okay, just 1 or 2 lines, nothing much. So this is with respect to your previous diagram. You can just read this. This is what I explained you about this diagram. So you can just read it. So now one question could come to you, explain the TCP/IP protocol stack or how data is transmitted. Okay, these questions come, or give an overview of TCP/IP. Then you can either explain this diagram. Now this diagram is not there in your textbook. Okay, this diagram is not there in your textbook, but this explanation is there in your textbook. So I just added this diagram so that it helps you to understand. Okay, but this diagram is there in your textbook. So if you are asked to explain in the exams the TCP/IP protocol stack, a brief explanation or overview, then you can explain with respect to this diagram. Okay, you can draw this diagram. If you remember this diagram, you can also draw this one because it will help in making a explanation clear. And then you can explain about how system A will send the data over to system B. Basically, this diagram is what is explained in this slide here. So you can just read it for 2 minutes. Okay, going to the next slide. So like I told you, just in 1 or 2 lines, all the protocols mentioned there in the previous slide, you can just read through. Okay, just 1 or 2 line description. You have already studied these protocols previously. We don't need to know any of these protocols in detail. Okay, in this subject. This is just a revision for you all in case you have forgotten. So yeah, so these are basically all the protocols that were, most of the protocols that were mentioned in that slide. Okay. Did you all find any of these protocols that you have not referred or you have not studied before? I think most of these protocols are covered in your previous 2 subjects, or all of these protocols and more are covered for you. Okay, so since we are not going to deal much with any of these protocols, I will not be going into any of these details. Okay, so basically we are just going to deal with TCP and IP. IP we have already done. Okay, and TCP we are going to do in today's topic, starting from today. So next we'll look at the TCP IP protocol architecture. So by architecture, your textbook means that we are going to just go into the details of the 4 layers of your TCP IP protocol. Okay, so little bit in detail, not into too much of depth. So your next question that could be asked for your exams is, explain the architecture of TCP IP. Then you need to explain all the 4 layers of TCP IP that I'm going to teach you in the next few slides. Okay, again now this will be a revision for you, so let's do it. So these are basically your 4 layers of the TCP IP protocol stack. Like I mentioned previously, topmost layer is application layer, then transport layer, then the internet layer, then you have the network access layer at the lowest level. Okay, so basically you need to explain all these 4 layers one by one. So the application layer mostly is used by the applications. Okay, so it is used to establish communication with other applications. Okay, so mostly the application layer is used to establish communication with other applications, and these applications could be running on different hosts. So sometimes the applications could be running on the same host, but most of the times you may need to establish the communication with another application on running on a different host. Okay, so examples of this application layer protocols we have already seen: HTTP, FTP, Telnet. Okay, these are some of the examples of the protocols on the application layer. You can just read what I just told you. Then followed by the application layer, we have the transport layer. Okay. So the main aim of the transport layer is to provide a reliable end-to-end data transfer. Okay. So that's the main aim of your transport layer. Okay. So by end-to-end, what you mean? One end of that communication will be a process or an application, and the other end also will be a process. So from one process to another process, the communication will be done, a reliable communication. Okay, that's why it is known as end to end. So one process on system A will be directly communicating with another process on system B. Okay, so the data will just not be delivered to the host, but the data delivery will happen to the directly to the process. Okay, so that is the way the transport layer has been designed to work. So like I told you, the first point, it provides a reliable end-to-end data transfer. Okay, it is also known as host-to-host protocol. Okay, first you identify the computer, then within that computer you identify the application. Okay, so that identification of the application is done by using the port number. I already explained you this, how it works. Okay, so I told you how the transport layer does the delivery of the data based on the port number. Okay, I've shown you the example of an email, how the email's port number is 25 and how the delivery is done. Okay, so basically your transport layer deals with multiplexing and demultiplexing. Okay, so since we are not interested in knowing the details, this is what I will tell you about the transport layer. Okay, does anyone want me to explain any point in this slide? You can let me know. Do you all understand this point? What is demultiplexing? Why the message needs to be demultiplexed? Can anyone tell me why we are demultiplexing the message? Okay, I would prefer Yash not to answer. Didn't understand the okay, Yash didn't understand. Anyone can try to explain what is the demultiplexing part? Just attempt. I will explain it afterwards. Anyone can try. What is the multiplexing, demultiplexing part? Just try if you want. Give you 30 seconds. Anyone wants to try? Okay, I'll explain what is the multiplexing and demultiplexing part there. So basically you are having a system A and you are having a system B. Okay, now in your system A there are many processes that are running. Okay, I'm just showing this like threads. Like again on your system B there are many processes that are running. Each process is running on a separate port number. Okay, now all these suppose processes have established communication with the corresponding process on system B. So the processes on system A have established communication with the corresponding processes on system B. Okay, and all of them want to send the data simultaneously. Okay, all the processes are sending the data simultaneously. Okay, now like we have discussed previously, this is your TCP/IP protocol stack will be there on both the systems. Okay, there will be application, transport, internet, and the network interface layer on both the systems. Okay, these are the applications that are running here on the application layer. So we have already discussed how the messages will be broken down and what they are called into each layer. Okay, we are not bothered about that. So we are just bothered about the transport layer and this transport layer now. Okay, we just bothered about this transport layer of both the systems. Okay, transport layer of system A, transport layer of system B. So like I told you previously, okay, suppose this is your SMTP, so your email, it will be running at 25. Similarly, if this is your email, it will be also running at 25. Okay, port number, and this is the port number 25. Similarly, the other applications will be running at the other respective port numbers. Okay, so now in this side on system A, suppose it's sending data, say 2 applications or more are sending the data, what will be done? All of this will be passing their messages. Okay, they will be passing their messages to the transport layer, like as per this diagram here that we have discussed. As per this diagram, okay, application layer messages will be passed to the transport layer. Okay, the transport layer will break this message into segments. Okay, what will be happening is the transport layer will be gathering these messages. Okay, so on this side there is only one single transport layer. Okay, so there are multiple applications, so it will be gathering all these messages. Okay, and forming a segment. Just for you to understand, I'm telling you a simplified form. Okay, so it will be forming, taking these messages, and for you to understand, I'm just forming one segment. Okay, what basically this is what is known as multiplexing. In multiplexing, what you do, there are multiple data sources like this, and you gather all of this into one. Okay, so basically what the transport layer will be doing on the system A side, it will taking all the data, okay, and it will be multiplexing. Okay, it could take the data from a single application and multiplex, okay, or it could take it from different applications and multiplex. So basically what it will be doing, gathering this into segments. So this will be just one segment, for example. Okay, so it is multiplexed. The different applications data is multiplexed into one segments. Now this segment will be taken and delivered here. Okay, now it is come as one segment. It is reached here as one segment. Now this segment contains the data of various applications. Okay, so the data has to reach to the various applications. So what the data of the email should reach to the email process. The data of some other process should reach to that respective process. So here and this side, this one segment is demultiplexed. So you break it up into this side on the system B side. So basically once the data reaches the transport layer, okay, you break it up. That breaking up is known as demultiplexing. So that is what is the concept behind demultiplexing, right? If you remember. So you get the data on the receiver side and then you split it up and give it back. So this is what is the meaning of this sentence on this slide that we were understanding here. Okay, once the message reaches the host, it is demultiplexed with the port number and delivered to the appropriate application. That is the meaning of this. Okay, I'm just telling you in a very simplified way so that you understand the concept. Is it okay? Is it okay, the multiplexing and the demultiplexing, how it is happening? Just to understand this sentence, what it meant. Is it clear? Yeah, yes. So it could be more than one segment. It need not be like that. How to tell you is like there could be I can't frame the sentence correctly, but if I tell you more than this, you will get confused. Okay, let me try. till now you'll have understood now before I explain more. Okay, if you are getting confused, now the next 5 minutes what I'm going to explain you have to erase from your mind. Okay, so that's why I'm telling you till now is clear before I go to the further explanation. Okay, this is slightly out of syllabus thing, but let me just tell you. So basically what we are doing, what I mean to say is, basically your transport layer, see, this is your system A. Okay, it is having the 4 layers. So it does not mean your transport layer will be just making one segment at a time and sending only one segment at a time. Okay, it does not mean that way. What I meant is, at this particular time, instant in time, there were say 3 applications. Okay, these 3 applications had data to send. Okay, at this moment in time, say these were the all were the first data. Okay, so all this data, okay, which are named as 0. So there were 3 processes, P1, P2 and P3. Okay, so each of them had their respective data zeros. So all these data zeros are multiplexed into one segment. Okay, and transmitted, because at this moment in time there is no other data to be sent. Okay, after certain time, say P1 is having data is 1 and P2 is having data is 1. So what transport layer will make? It will make another segment and take this 1 and 1 and send this across. So like this. So if okay, and you simultaneously also it is having more data, it may make multiple segments at the same time. It may make multiple segments at the same time. So I don't mean to say that it is sending only one segment at a time. It may make multiple segments also at the same time, depending on the processes and the requirement. Okay, in short, this is what could be, this is what can happen also simultaneously, depending on the size of the segment. Suppose the size of the segment has been fixed, okay, and the data to be sent is more, then it could make 2 segments like this and transmit. Or if suppose the data transmission, the data is ready at different times, then also it could make 2 segments and send. So there are 2 scenarios that I can right now think of, wherein it could make multiple segments. Okay, wherein one point is the data is ready at different times. Second time is the segment size is maximum segment size has been reached, and then therefore you have to make multiple segments. Okay, so I don't mean to say that only one segment is sent at a time. Yeah, basically, yeah, that's what multiplexing is done to reduce the transport overhead. Now in the next layer, now this was the transport layer, no? When this segment is given to the IP layer, here is the IP layer. What the IP layer will do, it will take this segment, which is having something, and it will add its own IP layer. Okay, IP header. So in the IP header there are a lot of things, but one of the 2 important things is the source address and the destination address. The source address, it will put the address of system A, IP address of system A, and the destination address, it will put the IP address of system B. So it will add this information along with more information, and then it will pass this to the physical layer, your network interface layer, which will in turn add more data. Okay, some error checking or checksum or something, and it will send this thing across them. So basically this is the way then the packets are sent across as frames. So now this will be sent across as a frame then. So this is how in short like it works, a basic idea of how your packet transmission happen or your data transmission happens. Okay, is it okay? Just we don't need to know so much in details, but yeah, since you are asking, so that is what happens in transport layer. Okay, so going over to the next layer. So the next layer is your internet layer. So like I have told you, so in your internet layer it will be known as datagrams, or it will be known as packets. The data will be known as datagrams, IP datagrams, or it could be also known as packets. So it will IP layer will add, the IP protocol will add the source address and destination address. So basically the main functionality of this layer is to deliver the data between the two hosts using the IP address. Okay, so the main duty of this layer is to deliver the data between two hosts using the IP address. Okay, then there are other layer protocols also besides the IP protocol here, like the ICMP, ARP, RARP, and IGMP. So I had explained you at the beginning of this lecture how that transport layer and your network layer or the internet layer function. So does anyone want me to explain any point here? Anyone about the internet layer? Proceed. Okay, let's proceed. So the next layer, the lowest layer in your TCP/IP architecture is the network access layer. So basically, the main functionality of this is to encode the data and transmit it. Okay, so it adds some error detection, or it makes the data, it converts the packets into frames. Okay, so basically in the TCP/IP, the network access layer is made up of two layers: the data link layer and the physical layer. So if you are referring to your OSI model, these two were separate layers, but in TCP/IP they are combined as one layer and they are known as the network access layer. So basically some of the protocols that you use in the data link are Ethernet, token ring, FDDI, X.25, and so on. Okay. In the physical layer, you use all this coaxial cable or optical fiber or twisted pair of copper wires, etc. for transmission of data. So basically we don't need to know in detail the functionality. This much if we write about it is more than enough. So any questions about the TCP/IP protocol architecture before I proceed? Okay. So shall I continue? So if you look at compare your OSI model with the TCP/IP, this is the way the comparison will look like. Okay, you can you have already studied maybe the differences between this. Okay, I'm not going to go into depth of this the differences between this. This is just in diagram form how these two layers differ. Okay, your OSI model is having 7 layers. Okay, your TCP/IP protocol is having 4 layers, and this is the way the different names are there for the different layers. Okay, some names of the layers are the same, whereas some names have been changed. So basically in OSI model, you are having application and presentation layer, which is now known as the application layer in TCP/IP. Transport layer remains the same. Session layer is no longer there. Okay, it's combined basically. Network layer in OSI is known as the internet layer in TCP/IP. The data link and the physical layer of OSI is known as the network access layer. Okay. You could be asked a question because this has been taught to you previously in the previous subjects. That's why I kept this in the slide. You could be asked a question in the exams. What is the difference between TCP/IP and the OSI model? Okay. You need to find out this answer if you don't know and keep at least 5 points ready. So I won't be teaching you this since you have already done this. We just, okay. So next we'll look at the basic functioning of your, now we have already looked at what is your TCP IP protocol. Okay. So just to revise before I go forward, we have discussed how in your TCP IP protocol, what are the layers, what are the protocols in each layer. Okay. So on this slide, I've already shown you what are the different protocols. Okay. Then we have discussed why the name has come about, because although there are around 15-20 protocols, the two most important protocols and the two most popular protocols in this is the TCP and IP. Therefore, the name for this entire thing has been come as TCP/IP protocol stack. Okay, but remember there are more protocols beside this TCP/IP. Okay, and basically it consists of 4 layers. And then we went briefly about how each layer is forwards the message from one system to another. Okay, then we looked at a brief 1 or 2 line understanding of the different protocols. And then we looked briefly at the architecture, that is a little bit in detail of the different layers of TCP IP. Okay, now that we have understood how your TCP functions, what is the main functionality of your transport layer, okay, we'll now be focusing on the transport layer only. Okay, so we are not going to discuss now the remaining layers, your application layer or your internet layer or the network access layer. We'll be now focusing only on the transport layer. Okay, so basically, as we had discussed previously, in your transport layer there are mainly 2 protocols, TCP and UDP. Okay, so we'll just look briefly at these both protocols, and then we'll be only studying about TCP. Okay, we'll not be studying about UDP. Now that we have, I've already told you what we are going to study next. So now we are going to study next in the transport layer, little bit in brief of TCP, a brief of UDP, and then we'll go and study only about TCP. Okay. So that is what is this topic now, about adaptation of TCP. Okay. So let's start. So like I told you, transport layer is having mainly 2 protocols, TCP, that is transmission control protocol, and UDP, which is user data protocol. Okay. Then TCP, as you know, is connection oriented and UDP is connectionless. Okay. And there are many more differences between them, but we are not going to study this UDP, so we are not going to discuss more about UDP. Okay. So basically you need to know only that your transport layer has these 2 protocols. Okay, and TCP is connection oriented and UDP is connectionless. Okay, then TCP is known for reliable transfer. Okay, so basically all data that you send will be received by the destination. Okay, it guarantees the transfer, whereas your UDP does not guarantee the data transfer. Okay, UDP normally is used, you know, wherever UDP is used. So you need to, if you ask these differences between TCP and UDP, they could ask you, because you are supposed to have studied these protocols in the lower semesters. Okay, so you need to just read up about this UDP in case you have forgotten. Okay, now coming back to my subject, in TCP there are a lot of things that you can study and you have already studied about. Okay, you must have studied about how connection is established, what is the three-way handshake, what is sequence numbers, what are acknowledgements, how the acknowledgements are sent, and so on. Okay, so I've just written here in brief some of the functionalities that you may have studied before in your subject. Okay, so we are not going to study all of this. Okay, please remember, I'm not going to teach you all of this again, because then it will be just a repetition of your previous subject, and we don't need it for mobile computing. Okay, For mobile computing, basically of all these functionalities of TCP, we're going to deal with only flow control and congestion control. Okay, we are not going to be dealing with the connection establishment or what are sequence numbers or how acknowledgements are sent. Briefly, I may touch upon these topics, but that is not the main focus. Okay, the main focus of teaching you now TCP will be based on the flow control and based on the congestion control. Again, we are not going to go into the depth of these topics, just the what is flow control, how it helps, and what is congestion control and how it helps, and whether this flow control and congestion control that we use in wired networks can be used in mobile networks or wireless networks. Okay, that will be the focus of our study on TCP. Is it clear? So if you have any questions, you can let me know, or I will start with this topic of on TCP. Anyone has any question? Okay. So since this lecture has been already been going on for more than an hour, so I will want to teach for the next 15-20 minutes and stop. Okay, then it will become too much for you. It will become an overload. So since we are continuing the lecture without a break, so I just want you to pay attention for the next 15-20 minutes, and then we can stop. Okay. So is it clear what we are studying about a TCP? Okay, so then let's continue. So you can just read here. So like I've told you before, the TCP is known for a reliable data transfer. Okay, it will use sequence numbers, acknowledgements, then it will have some timeouts, and if packets are lost, then it will retransmit. Okay, then there's something known as, it has end-to-end semantics. Okay, end-to-end semantics. Does anyone understand what is the meaning of this end-to-end semantics? Okay, it's a very important thing for us in future. So does anyone understand what's the meaning of semantic, end-to-end semantic? Okay, let me tell you. So basically, suppose system A and there is system B. Okay. So now, like you know, in TCP, whenever a packet is sent, that packet will be acknowledged. Okay. So when A is sending a packet to B, okay, it expects the acknowledgement when a packet is sent by A. Suppose it sends a packet like this, A. So it sends a packet, say 0. So it expects this packet 0 to be acknowledged by B itself. Okay. Now along the way there is internet. Okay. B is connected to A through internet. There could be a router here in between. There could be a router here in between who buffers the data. Okay. Who buffers the data that is being exchanged between A and B. Okay. So it buffers and then does the routing. Okay. So, but A expects that the packet 0 which is being sent by it will be acknowledged by the destination, and the destination is B. Okay. So if, according to the way that TCP works, B will acknowledge it over the internet. So this will be the acknowledgement given by B. So A send a packet to B and B acknowledge the packet to A. Along the way there may have been some routers, more than one router. Okay, but the routers are not acknowledging the packet. A is sending the packet to B and the destination B is acknowledging the packet back to A. So in this case, we say that end-to-end semantics, the end-to-end rules of TCP are followed. Okay, A had sent a packet to the destination and the destination replies with the acknowledgement back to the source. So in that case, we mentioned that end-to-end semantics are maintained. Sometimes you will study in future, okay? Sometimes you will study in future that the destination does not reply with the acknowledgement, okay? The destination does not reply with the acknowledgement, but some buffer or some router in between will give back the acknowledgement. So A is sending, let me change the color. So what will happen is, you will learn this in future, is that A is sending a packet, okay? A is sending a packet, and there's the router in between, the internet. So A is sending the packet 0. It expects B to reply to it, acknowledge, okay? But the router will be replying with the acknowledgement. The router will be replying with the acknowledgement. A will not know who has replied with the acknowledgement. A will think that B has sent acknowledgement. Okay. A does not know. A only waits for the acknowledgement. A does not know from where the acknowledgement comes. So A will think that B has sent the acknowledgement. Okay. So in this case, instead of B, who is sending the acknowledgement? R is sending. The router is sending, and R will forward the packet here. R will forward this packet 0. Okay. It will forward the packet, and B's acknowledgement R will receive, but R will not forward this acknowledgement further. Okay. So in that case, we will say end-to-end semantics is not maintained, because in end-to-end semantics, what we expect, source sends the packet to the destination, and the destination acknowledges the packet. But when end-to-end semantics are not maintained, what will happen? Some buffer or some router in between the source and the destination will acknowledge the packet or will forward the packet. Okay. So in this case, we will say end-to-end semantics is not maintained. Is it clear what I'm trying to explain? Is it clear, students? What is the meaning of end-to-end semantics? Just in simple words, I'm trying to tell you. Is it clear? Just let me know before I proceed. Okay. So let's continue. So basically, like I told you, we are not going to be dealing with all the functionality of TCP, but we are going to directly jump to flow control. Okay. So in flow control, again, there are a lot of things. We are not going to deal with everything. Okay. So directly jumping to the topic that we need to study. So basically, flow control is used by TCP to control the congestion in the network. Okay. There are 2 points at which congestions can happen in the network. Okay. So suppose you are sending the data from one system to another. There are 2 main reasons because of which congestion could happen. Okay. So let me discuss both those points. That is system A, that is system B. Okay. In between there is a router. So all the data that is being sent will be received through the internet. So A is connected to the internet, B is connected to the internet. Okay. So router is having some buffer, some size of this buffer is there. A is having some buffer size, and the receiver B is having some buffer. Okay. I hope you know what is a buffer. Okay. So when A, this is the sender, A is the sender and B is the receiver. So congestion could happen in the network because of 2 reasons. A starts sending the data at a very high speed. Okay. So this speed, suppose, like you can see here, the size of the buffer in the router is say just 4. Okay. And say the sending speed of the A is quite high, it sends more than 4 packets at a time. Say it sends 5, or it sends 6, or say it sends 10. Okay, so what will happen at the router can handle only 4 packets at a time. So what will happen to the remaining packets? The remaining packets sent by A will get lost. Okay, so because they get lost, A will have to keep retransmitting those packets. So when such a thing keeps happening, when there are many senders who keep doing this, there it will lead to congestion in the network at the buffer of the router. Okay, so this could be one reason of the congestion, wherein multiple senders are sending data at a rate faster than at which the router's buffer can handle, at a data rate at which is faster than the network. Okay, basically router stands for the network. Okay, so the routers cannot handle the data, the speed at which the senders are sending. So this is one reason for the congestion. Okay, the second reason for the congestion could be the router can handle the data. Okay, the sender is sending at a high speed. The sender is sending at a high speed. The network can handle the data at a high speed, suppose, but the destination's buffer is small. Okay, the destination cannot handle the data at a high speed. So what will happen? A is sending the data to the network at a high speed. Okay, so the buffer at B, the receiver, is not able to store all the data that is being received. What happens? The data starts getting dropped. The packets start getting dropped. So therefore, this is the second reason at which the congestion happens. So what will happen is the data gets dropped and A has to keep retransmitting the packets. Okay, so A has to keep retransmitting, and if a similar scenario repeats itself, now I'm just showing you two systems, A and B, but if there are, as you know, there are multiple systems in the network. So if a similar system scenario repeats itself between all the senders and receivers, then that could be the second cause of congestion. Okay, wherein the receiver's buffer is not able to handle the rate at which the data is being sent by the sender. So these are the two main reasons for congestion in a network, in a wired network. Okay, I'm talking with respect to a wired network. So the first reason is the network cannot handle the speed, the router's buffer cannot handle the speed at which the sender is sending. And the second reason is the receiver's buffer cannot handle the speed at which the sender is sending. So due to these two reasons, the network the network will result in a congestion. Packets will start getting dropped. Okay, so this is what we were trying to tell in this point here. Okay, so you can just read this, and if you have any doubts you can ask me in the chat. So in order to avoid the congestion, we use flow control techniques. Okay, there are a lot of flow control techniques, but we'll just look at one flow control technique. So any questions about this, students? Any questions? Stella, this is with regards to that end-to-end semantics, this question of yours. Okay, I will reply to this question later on. Okay, you just remind me when we deal with this later on. If you don't understand, then you can ask me. Okay, this is just for you to understand what is the what is end-to-end semantics. I gave you the example of router. Okay, just to understand. So later on, I will tell you that time. If you don't understand, then we will see about it. So about this flow control, you have understood why we need flow control. Okay, Flow control is basically used to control the rate at which the sender is sending packets. Okay. So like I told you, the two main reasons why the congestion will happen. Okay. One is the network's buffer or the router's buffer cannot handle the data. The second is the receiver's buffer cannot handle the data. So therefore we need to control the speed at which the sender is sending the data. Okay. So that speed control is done by a technique known as flow control. Okay. So basically flow control means we control the speed at which the sender is sending the data. Okay. So when we control the speed, automatically control the congestion in the network. So let's look at the technique which we are using in TCP for flow control. And this is one of the techniques. Okay. Now this technique is a famous technique known as the sliding window protocol. Okay. The sliding window mechanism is used for flow control. Okay. Again, like I told you, sliding window is just one of the flow control methods. There are many more. Okay. But we are just sticking to your syllabus, and since they are mentioned only this technique, we will just revise this technique. Okay. So have you all understood what is flow control? So just to repeat, flow control is used to control the speed at which the sender is sending the data in order. So this is done in order to avoid congestion. Okay. Because if you don't use flow control, the sender will keep sending the data at a very high speed, which may result in the router buffer overflow or the receiver buffer overflow, leading to congestion. So therefore we use flow control. So in flow control, now we are studying about sliding window protocol. Okay. In sliding window protocol, basically before the actual data transfer happens, what happens is the sender and the receiver determine the buffer size. Okay. Something known as the congestion window or the window size. Okay. So basically the receiver tells what is the size at which it can receive the data, how many packets it can receive before it will lead to a buffer overflow. Okay. So that size of that window is predetermined. So that data is exchanged between the sender and the receiver. Okay. So the window size is fixed, and then the data transfer begins. So I'll just briefly explain you how the sliding window works. Okay. Then we'll stop for today. So basically in your TCP IP, you know that the basic mechanism the sender expects is when it sends one packet, okay. So suppose the packet is 0, it will expect a receiver to acknowledge it. Okay, so this is the acknowledgement for that packet 0. So this is the basic mechanism with the TCP IP. Okay. Again, I'm not going into the details. You know the details, all the three-way handshake, how the connection is established, and all those sequence numbers, acknowledgements, and all those things. Okay. So this is the basic expectation of the sender and the receiver. Packet is sent and the corresponding acknowledgement is received. Okay. Now when the acknowledgement is received, then again the sender will send the next packet and so on. Okay. That's what is the basic principle behind your TCP working. Okay. Then you expect a acknowledgement for that packet. Okay. Now I am showing you a simplified version wherein we are sending one packet at a time. It did not always work like this. Okay. You have already studied TCP before, so you know it did not work like this. Okay. So you can always send more than one packet. Can you tell me how does the sender know that a packet has been lost? Suppose the sender has sent this packet, okay, this packet, Okay, say the first packet is received. Okay, it is received, so it knows that it is received because it got the acknowledgement. Then it sends the next packet. Now this packet 1 has got lost. This packet has got lost. How will the sender know that the packet has got lost? Can you tell me? This is just a revision. The two main ways of deciding that a packet has got lost. How will the sender know that packet has got lost? Correct. Both these answers are correct. Stella has told that it has a clock. Okay. And Sakshi has said no acknowledgement is received. Okay. Let's go through both of these quickly so that you please note it down. Okay. This is needed for future. So one thing is always you must have studied in your previous subject is whenever a packet is sent, okay, and an acknowledgement is received, this time between the sending and the acknowledgement receiving, this time is known as the round trip time, RTT. Okay, round trip time. So your sender, after sending 1 or 2 packets, it knows how much approximately time it takes for the packet to be sent and received. So when it sends this packet 1, it knows based on this packet zeros sending and the receiving, it knows some certain time is there, say, okay, which is known as the round trip time, how much time it will take for the acknowledgement to come back to it. So when it sends this packet 1, it waits for this much amount of time. It waits for this much amount of time. And in this much amount of time, when it does not get the acknowledgement back, it knows that this packet has got lost. Is it clear? So this is one of the ways in which the sender knows that the packet has got lost based on a timer it sets. Okay. So how it comes to know about this timer? Based on the first 1 or 2 packets that it sends, it fixes this round trip time. Okay. So based on that, all the subsequent packets, it fixes a timer. Based on that timer, it expects the acknowledgement to come back within that much time. Okay. Within that much time, if the acknowledgement does not come back, the sender assumes that the packet that was sent is lost. Is it okay? Everyone understood about round trip time? Just let me know about round trip time. Everyone is clear? Yeah. Okay. So the second way the sender and receiver will tell each other that the packets have been lost is, okay. Now round trip time you have understood. So let me tell you the second way. So like we have discussed, sender sends one packet, okay, receiver acknowledges it. So say this packet 0 acknowledged, sender sends packet 1, this packet is lost, okay. Then sender sends packet 2, this is received, okay, this is received. Packet 1 is lost but 2 has been received. Now receiver has to tell the sender that it did not get the packet 1. So in order to tell that it has not got the packet 1, what it does, it sends the acknowledgement of the last packet that was received successfully. Okay. Before packet 1, which was the last packet that was received successfully, was packet 0. So when it gets packet 2, in order to tell that it did not get packet 1, the last packet before packet 1 that it had got successfully was 0. Okay, this was what it had got successfully. So it, in order to tell that packet 1 is lost, it sends acknowledgement here as 0. So it says that up to packet 0 I've got the packet successfully. But say before it got this acknowledgement, say it had sent like this more packets. Say it sent more packets. So it sent packets 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so the sender had said this, send this to 3 packets, 2, 3 and 4. So what in response to each of these packets that the receiver has got, okay, in order to tell the sender that it has not got the packet 1, it will send 3 acknowledgements in response to this 3 packets that it got. It will send 3 acknowledgements. Each of these acknowledgements will be for the packet 0, because packet 0 it has received successfully, okay, before the packet 1 which was lost. So when the sender gets 3 duplicate acknowledgements, okay, it has got 3 duplicate acknowledgement. Why it is getting 3 duplicate acknowledgements? Because the receiver is trying to tell that, okay, you are sending me packet 2, packet 3, packet 4, but I have not got the packet after this packet. After this packet, which packet you are sent, I have not yet got that one. So please send that one again. Okay. So when the sender gets 3 duplicate acknowledgement, now these are duplicate acknowledgements because it had already got the original acknowledgement here. Okay. For packet 0, it had already got the acknowledgement here. So when it gets again packet 0 acknowledgement, packet 0 acknowledgement, packet 0 acknowledgement. Okay. Why now 3 acknowledgements are coming? Because the receiver has got this packet successfully. Okay. So receiver is trying to tell that you have sent this one and 0 successfully, but I have not got the packet 1. So therefore it is sending this acknowledgement as packet 0, is not sending this acknowledgement as packet 2, 3 and 4. So when the sender gets 3 duplicate acknowledgements, these are another duplicate acknowledgements. Why? Because these are all the acknowledgements for packet 0. So the sender will conclude that packet has been lost. Which packet has been lost? Because you are getting the acknowledgement for 0, it will assume that packet 1 has been lost. So it will retransmit now packet 1. So these are the 2 ways in which the sender and receiver try to communicate with each other that a packet has been lost. Okay. So one way is by setting a timer, which is known as the round trip time. Okay. So round trip time is nothing but the time between sending a packet and receiving the acknowledgement. And the second way is wherein a packet gets lost, due to which the receiver sends 3 duplicate acknowledgements, and when the 3 duplicate acknowledgements are received, the sender concludes that the packet following that was lost and it retransmits that packet. Okay, this just in brief I'm telling you how it works, TCP/IP. I'm not going into the details. So are you clear about these both methods, how your sender and receiver communicate with each other with respect to lost packets? Saili, are you clear? Avina, Ashutosh, Disha, Gauraj, clear?
Yes, so.
Okay. Am
Yes,
I going
so.
fast? Am I going fast? Am I fast, students?
No, sir.
Okay. So let me then just, based on these basics, please remember these 2, okay? How the packet retransmission, what it means by packet retransmission, I will not be explaining again and again every time, and what is you mean by duplicate acknowledgements, okay? So now to explain the sliding window protocol, assume that the sender is having this 11 packets to transmit, okay, starting from 0 till 10, okay? So there is a sender, there is a receiver, and we are sending these packets using TCP, okay? So we are, first of all, since it's a sliding window protocol, the sender and receiver will discuss what is the buffer size. Okay, so how many packets the sender can send safely to the receiver without causing a buffer overflow at the receiver's end. Okay, so basically it will discuss, they both will discuss the size of the window. That is known as the congestion window, or just basically your window size. Okay, so depending on the size of the receiver will send this information to the sender. Okay, so let's assume that the receiver has sent the size of its buffer as 4. So that means the sender can send maximum 4 packets at a time. Okay, if it sends 5 packets or more, then it will cause a overflow at the receiver. Okay, so it can send maximum 4 packets at a time, and then wait for the acknowledgements to come of these 4 packets before it starts sending more packets. Okay, so basically this is how your sliding window principle is. Okay, let me tell you one by one how it works. Okay, now since the window size is 4, okay, what the sender does, it can send 4 packets. So what it will do, this is the first 4 packets it decides to send one by one. Okay, so packet 0, packet 1, packet 2, packet 3, it is shown here. Okay, so these 4 packets have been sent, and it cannot send any more. Okay, it cannot, it has total 11 packets to send, but it cannot send any more, because the receiver told if you send more than 4 packets, the buffer will become full, or it will overflow. Okay, so now 4 packets it could send, sender has sent 4. Now it's waiting for the acknowledgements to come. Is it clear? So now I'll show you how it works. Now say the receiver replies with acknowledgement. Okay, so it replies with only one acknowledgement. So it acknowledges the packet 0. It had got 4 packets. But it has acknowledged the first packet only till now. Okay, so it acknowledges the packet 0. So it is shown here. This is the acknowledgement for packet 0. So when the sender gets the acknowledgement for packet 0. Okay, how many packets remain? Okay, how many packets remain which are not yet acknowledged? How many packets remain which are not yet acknowledged? See, receiver has replied with this acknowledgement. Okay, so it has acknowledged the packet 0. So how many more packets are remaining to be acknowledged? Okay, 3 packets are remaining. So now 3 packets, how many packets are remaining to be acknowledged? 3 packets. Okay, that is packet 1, packet 2, and packet 3. So how many packets the sender could send without causing an overflow at the receiver? The number of packets that the sender could send safely without causing an overflow was 4. Okay, so when the sender gets one acknowledgement, what the sender could do is it could send this 4th packet, this packet 4, okay, with the number 4. So what it does is it sends this packet across packet 4. Why? Because maximum number of packets that it can send without causing an overflow at the receiver side is 4. So now if you look, it is waiting for the acknowledgement of this packet 1, waiting for the acknowledgement of packet 2, packet 3, and packet 4. So these are 4 packets now. Okay, so it is waiting for the acknowledgement according to the receiver's buffer, which is 4. The moment it gets one acknowledgement, it can send another packet across. So now it is waiting for this 4 packets acknowledgement. Okay, from packet 1 till packet 4, and it has received the acknowledgement for packet 0. Okay, that is what we have shown in the next slide. Okay, so I just change to the next slide. Is it clear what you have you all understood this? What I just told you? So now in the next slide, this is what I have just told you. So we are waiting now for the packets from acknowledgements for packets 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay. So that's why we are showing the window here. Okay. We are waiting for these acknowledgements 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay. Maximum packets that the sender could have sent is 4. And then it has to wait for that many number of acknowledgements. So we have sent 4 packets across. 1 packet's acknowledgement has been received. Therefore, the window has been slided to include the next packet. Now, if we receive one more acknowledgement, okay, I will want you all to answer in the chat. Say the receiver replies with acknowledgement for packet 1. Then which packet can be sent? Then which packet can be sent? And for which packets the sliding window will be covering? Which packets the sliding window will be present on? So if we receive the acknowledgement for packet 1, which packet the sender can send? Can you answer? Okay. Okay. Should I continue this topic tomorrow then, or the next lecture? Should I stop, or should I finish this sliding window and then should I stop? Okay. 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 Let's do it then next lecture. Okay. Since I've been talking non-stop for quite a long time, I think I'll stop there. Okay. So yeah. So students, the sliding window, then I'll continue in the next lecture. Okay, when you're fresh, and then we'll continue from there. Okay. So I'll stop the recording.